Good morning, everybody. I'm Tlish, and you're watching Coffee and Clicks. Um, I just wanted to thank everybody that's viewing on YouTube, at home, or wherever you are viewing Coffee and Clicks and tuning in every so often. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content and enjoy today's episode of Coffee and Clicks. Hi, I'm Tlish, and you're watching Coffee and Clicks. Today, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. It's greatly appreciated. And today, we are very lucky to have to be joined by Adam Friedman, the reigning 2020 national champion and the 2020 world champion that just happened recently in October. Hi, Adam. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Let me start by saying, yeah, definitely congratulations on Worlds, on Nationals. You've had like an awesome run in 2020, and extremely skilled HeroClix player in general. Can you describe your experiences in Worlds and just how the tournament went and everything? The was it was the online Worlds, and it happened during Columbus Day weekend.
Was that Columbus Day? Oh, yeah, that was Columbus Day weekend. Okay, that made
I
that.
think it
Yeah,
was.
because we had the Monday off.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just didn't even occur to me that was that holiday. Yeah. So I started off the event thinking I was not going to make cut. So I had the automatic buy into the second part of Saturday because it had the weird rock format where they have like a pre-event event that qualifies you for the second half of the day for Swiss, and then after that, then it's single them on the Sunday. So for the second half of Saturday, round one, I lost a very, very close game by like 10 points. And it was one of those games where if you'd gone half a turn before time was called, I was ahead and I had really good chances of just completely finishing off the game, and then just nothing worked out. And so I was kind of demoralized after that. I was like, oh my goodness, how can I lose by such a narrow margin when I was ahead by so much? And then in game two, I just got bodied. I believe it was I'm forgetting names, but it was the player. I think he was top four in the end of the event. He was the one who lost to. It wasn't Joe. Was the final? No, I can't remember anyone's name from this event already. It's only been like 2 weeks, and I can't remember. So the one who was on the double 76 Punisher War Machine Iron Pharaoh team. I played against him, and basically I have this technique I use in games of HeroClix, particularly high-level competitive. I invented it last year. I call it the Isaac Gambit, and it's where you throw away your entire team to energy explosion. That's the trick. If you really want to lose a game, you just let your opponent energy explode your whole team, and then you lose. It's a great way to do that. If you want to like lose like the hard way, like yeah, you could like have to roll dice and like maybe you attack them some and they attack you some, and in the end you're worse. It's like no. If you really want to lose, you just run all your stuff into energy explosion, and you're just done right there. And so I was 0-2 with like 140 points or something going into round three. So I was like, I don't know if I'm making this one for making cut, but then I ended up getting the next two games and getting enough points to make like 14th place for the top 16 cut. And then I won the rest of them, so it worked out.
So what were the two teams that you lost to in the beginning? What were they?
The first one was basically the Stock Widows team from Nats. So it's Captain Marvel, Chase Widow, Shifting Focus Widow, Hogan, and Remaker, I think, was for Chase Widow. And then might have been a map bonus or something. I forget how the points work out on that. But that was basically it. And then he won map and took me to Wakanda. And like I vultured. So the funny thing is like the match was going fine for me up until basically that last turn. So I vultured in. I took out Hogan. And then I ended up on the sequence net hitting the Shifting Focus Widow once. And then Vulture was just there. And then being able to bring in Black Vulcan to poison a bunch of stuff next to poison Chase Widow and poison Captain Marvel. I think, yeah, Captain Marvel onto click 2. And then he kills Vulcan. Vulture takes a little bit of damage. Actually, a lot of damage. I think he goes to like second to last click. And then basically my next turn, I'm able to take out Shifting Widow. And I have a sequence where after all the flurry, when most of the flurries are done, after the shifting is dead, I am able to hit Captain Marvel to the last click, and then I have the second attack of Vulture's Flurry, and if that hits, it's just over, and it's like a 12 on an 18.
Okay.
And it just bricks. And I'm like, okay, well, I do have follow-ups here. So I was able to get an attack with Gorilla Grodd, needing an 8. And if that 8 just hits, game over. And then I'm able to have, that misses. So then I have a follow-up attack, which is Magneto. And Magneto's shooting needing a 9. And if that 9 just hits, then it's just over and she's dead. And so all of those things just miss. And so he's able to barely get up on points with, because Captain Marvel survives. And it ends up being Captain Marvel's able to do the hypersonic, move through Vulture to auto kill it, and then hits the attack on Magneto. And it puts him up by 10 points because at the end of it, he's killed that 75 from those two. And then he gets 25 from the Black Vulcan versus I have 75. There was another 25 that I'm forgetting somehow. I don't remember what it was. So, and then whereas I had 75 from Shifting Widow, and then Hogan being 20 instead is what cost it. And that's basically what it came down to. A 25 versus, like, it was like a 25 versus 20 situation on one of the random points. And so that just lost it. And then game 2, it was Punisher War Machine, I think it was 2 1776s, 2 Mary Janes, 1 Mary Jane, 2 Mary Janes, some number of Mary Janes, at least one. And then Iron Pharaoh and Magneto. And basically turn 1, he killed my spin ring, doing the normal trick they do where they TK up Mary Jane, Vooper, and then she sends in with the autonomous sidestep plus kill the object to kill spin ring. My turn 1, like, I had just completely forgotten about energy explosion in that, despite the fact he was playing the energy explosion ring. I was like, oh yeah, that's the energy explosion ring. It's like really good or something. I forgot it was like penetrating energy explosion. For some reason, I thought it was an extra target. And so I got to heal up my Dark Phoenix by killing a paparazzi, and then got to equip Vulture because he rolled the extra sidesteps. I just did that, and then got to place like 1 square free blocking, and then reposition everything with sidesteps. But I just totally spaced on the energy explosion. And so I ended up leaving all my stuff clustered together. And so he just, like, the whole team died. That's not true. So Dark Phoenix died, Magneto died, and everything else like took 2 damage, which meant Vulture's on click 3 is not so great. Stuff like that. And that was basically the sequence there. And then Valeria got shot to death with Punish War Machine. So I was really, really behind. And there was just no recovering it from there. Like, there were a couple turns where if I got a little bit lucky, I could potentially come back. I mean, I had 2 turns in a row where basically if Jason just never misses on his chain mind control, then I've got outs because I can like hit Punisher War Machine with the mind control, smack something for 4, mind control the next thing, hit something else for 3, mind control the next thing, hit something else for 4. I mean, so if Jason just goes ham, that game was winnable, but Jason just rolled like 4s, so it didn't matter. And so my dice did not save me from my egregious positioning in that game.
Okay, yeah. I mean that's rough. I mean, how often does that happen to? I mean, because I don't know. Like, at least with the first game, like where you just kind of send Vulture out and then you miss something and then you get stranded out there. How often does that happen?
Not really that often. I mean, the more common is not really that often. If Vulture is getting sent in, usually he's going pretty ham. It depends on the matchup. So like that is basically the theory against Widows is you're going to get 1 or 2 small things and get some damage into the other stuff. And that's just enough because the problem for them is, okay, well, if they start attacking Vulture and they're spending a whole turn on the Vulture, it's actually not that easy for them to kill him, particularly if the 76 is moved up because they only have 2 actions to work with. And so it's not so actually easy for them to get the full 6 damage they need into Vulture and not just like leave themselves open to everything. Because there's a Dark Phoenix they have to worry about the retail on. There's Jason making whatever it is he's making on the Pog side that they have to worry about. And then there's, Magneto can shoot and all the other, and 76 can attack just fine. So all that stuff is a problem in the sense that they can't just go all in on Vulture and then if Vulture's dead, they win. It's like, well, no, if they're spending a whole turn on Vulture, they're giving me a lot of time to basically just make their life miserable afterwards. And it's not even clear that they can kill Vulture in a lot of those situations. So like in the way the positioning happened, I believe his chase Widow basically got forced to go after Black Vulcan instead. Because if he goes after Vulture, then the Black Vulcan lives another turn and then immediately takes the Widow off of the top 2 clicks because she already took 1 penetrating from the immediate poison. So like Vulture's actually not even the priority target there. So in the sense of him being stranded, like he's sort of stranded, but they can't really do anything to him in terms of the priority of the targets. It's sort of hard to have him be the thing you're worried about when you've got a Black Vulcan about to take you off your best power. And so stuff like that. And then in the second game, I mean, it wasn't so much the Vulture was stranded, it's just he didn't really get to do anything because I screwed up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And I was looking at your team earlier. Let me bring up your team. I'm going to share my screen. So this is your team that you played in Worlds. So it wasn't just Vulture. You had a lot of other parts going on in there. I mean, actually, this is your Nationals team, which was a little bit different, but that was before Spider-Man Venom Carnage. Right.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah. It's the same team. I mean, the only difference is some of the supporting disrupting effects.
Right.
All the core stuff's the same.
And so on this team you have on the World's team, on your World Championship team, you have Jason Wingard, Vulture, 1776, Dark Phoenix, Magneto, Marvella, Von Doom, Valeria, and Proteus. So like, what is your reasoning for including like certain figures like Proteus and Marvella?
Well, so Marvell is a little bit more complicated, and that has to do with the set update and the change that happened from the original. Proteus is on the original version, and he was there for a very straightforward reason. I needed a way to beat stealth because none of my stuff has improved targeting stealth except for like the giant reach. And there were, at least in testing, there were certain variations of the Widow team where basically the whole team had stealth and they could perpetually have everything with no IT. So I couldn't even like get them at 2 range with the arms. I had to get adjacent, made the spacing a lot worse. And it also basically meant I could never have Valeria do anything in that matchup. And so Proteus got added pretty early, well, about halfway through the process of figuring out what to play for Nats. And the idea for him is basically he says, okay, I can have Valeria after she's equipped. If he ever approaches me on a team like Widows, it's like, okay, well, if Valeria is equipped with spin, she can just go like sidestep up, get to exactly 5 away from Proteus, so she's still within range, and then like full move up. And after full move, she can place water terrain under one of the Widows, which then means they're no longer in stealth, which means I can just yank them out of it, and I don't have to worry about the no IT.
Okay.
Because IT doesn't apply if it's water rather than hindering. So like that is the main use. The other big thing that it did is it's just a bunch of free extra squares of blocking defensively and stuff like the mirror. Which is nice. Terrain manipulation is really, really powerful. It's just one of those things a lot of players underestimate just how big of a difference it can make, even just hindering terrain. And Proteus does everything. I mean, he can make blocking in hindering terrain, which is a big deal. Normally, you can't do that with barrier because the power says so. But there's no inherent limitation on placing a blocking marker in hindering terrain otherwise. And so Proteus lets you do that. And so, for instance, on a map like the I forget the name of it. It's the indoor-outdoor castle map where there's all that water and hindering and all that crap in the way. Like Proteus makes your life a lot easier if you need to protect a bunch of characters because he can turn one of the squares of water into blocking it to make your formation easier. Whereas if you had to do it strictly with barrier, you might have this really awkward count where you needed like 10 squares of barrier to protect something you could do with like 5 otherwise.
Right. Okay. Because barrier specifically states that you cannot place blocking into printed hindering, but
anything that's not clear, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, that was a really good use of Proteus.
The other thing he just does that's really good is he's really good at protecting Dark Phoenix, because almost nothing has improved characters in the format right now. So Dark Phoenix just carries him around as a shield, and if they want to shoot at him, I'm like, well, 1/3 of the time you're not even killing him. So. And if that happens, he gets to heal, and then you're double not killing him.
Okay.
That's come up a few times, and he's really good for that too. But the actual main thing was the disruption on the getting rid of their defensive stealth was the biggest reason.
Okay. Yeah. That's. And were there any other teams that you faced that you thought stood out other than the ones that you lost to in the beginning?
Uh, I mean, I played Isaac again, and he had the same team he had for Nats. Team's still good. I mean, it was good at Nats. It was good at Worlds. Team's fine. It's the like +10 Fates Justice League with Double Atom and Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Like that team's going to continue to be good until it retires, I expect. And then, I mean, the other one is just I really liked the specific Barclay variation from the finals. I mean, I think Poison Ivy was a clever find. Like, I would never have thought to play that piece, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, it does a bunch of things you want. It has the barrier to be able to use it. It has a nice Barclay-like attack at range effect that can bypass a bunch of the limitations in terms of line of fire because you just need to be adjacent to the markers. The extra, like being worth 4 points towards theme for 65 is actually pretty nice, especially because you're not adding 4-figure bases you have to protect, which is one of the big limitations there because every additional character, like 1 by 1 that you have to add to the team makes it that much harder to protect without enough blocking that you can avoid something like a vulture coming in. Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely liked that. I'm not so sure how much I liked DeVenom, but, if you're going to play that team that way, probably need him.
So DeVenom just makes it a scientist theme? Or...
Yeah, it turns it into a named theme, and it gets you access to, like, Mary Jane and Marvella as well. So, I mean, I definitely understand why he's there. I just don't like the piece. Right. Every time I look at him, I'm like, man, that's not very much for 60 points.
And so, like,
at least as compared to 76, who I'm more used to, like, wanting to play. It's like 76 for 50. It's just, like, that's insane.
That's another thing that I noticed because I was reading up on, like, some of your articles from Majestics, and I noticed that you wrote that you didn't think much of the Spider-Man Venom Carnage set, or what do you think about it, like, the set in general?
I mean, for people who care about comics, the set's probably great because it's got a bunch of cool figures with the cool sculpts that have relatively interesting effects for some of them. Like, all that's really neat. Gameplay wise, the set comes down to like 3.5 figures as far as I'm concerned. Basically it's Mary Jane. I mean, I guess like 4 figures and then a mechanic. So there's like, you got Mary Jane Watson, Marvella 76, or like the 3, obviously you're going to play these figures. And then there's Groot on the off chance that they nerf Valeria and don't nerf him. Then he sort of tries to fill that slot, and he probably does it fine. And then basically the only other thing that I care about in that set is the autonomous guys, the secret identities, because they're sort of annoying and hard to kill and get points off of, and autonomous is really, really powerful. But most of them aren't even that good anyway, just too expensive. I mean, 35 points for Peter is just too much, I think. So there's a couple of them, though, that are okay. I mean, you've got the, 25.1 Gwen, who like takes away super senses and is like 4 clicks with super senses herself and then turns into Ghost Spider. Like, she's good. She's certainly going to have a place in the format. There's the 25-point scientist with Perplex that is also a secret identity. Like, he's going to have a place in the format because he's a utility piece that you basically can't kill in one hit, and he's got a good keyword. But basically the rest of the set, I'm just not impressed. Which is not a bad thing. I mean, not every set needs to be ABPI.
Yeah.
Or like half the set's ridiculous.
Right. I mean, are you
or X-Men in the X-Men the animated series, where literally every figure in the set is ridiculous.
Yeah, I thought X-Men the animated series was really good. That set.
That set's preposterously good. I mean, like, it's hard for me to look at that set and like I tried to find like what is like an unplayable figure in that set, and like I think it's Toad is like the one unplayable figure. Everything else is like, there could be a home for this.
All right, and then yeah. So and you know what? When you brought up the second place team, Robert Gallagher's team, I was thinking, like, is barrier, like, what is the strategy against Vulture? Like, when people are playing against your team, what's like the strategy to?
Well, so that's a tricky thing. So it depends on when you're asking. If you're asking prior to rotation, the answer is you hit Vulture first, either with an outwit so that he just can't charge at all, and then he's not scary, or just an attack to take him off the early scary clicks, and then he kind of doesn't have great values and doesn't actually have charge anyway. Like that was always the plan before. So the reason he was kind of kept tempered prior to rotation is every single team in the format that had a higher theme than whatever he was playing had the ability to basically go, okay, past turn 1, TK up something, call in Cyclops, hit Vulture for 3 before Vulture ever did anything. And then Vulture's not that scary after that. It's very hard for him to get the positioning he needs without the extra 5 square to charge. All that stuff's a problem. And then also there were just a bunch of unseens running around who are just saying, okay, move up half the map out with charge. You're not doing anything, Vulture. Ha 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 ha. You look so silly. Nowadays, it's kind of hard to see how you attack him first. Like, it's just not easy to do. Like, there aren't that many good Alpha Strike teams in the format. Basically, you have Vulture, Batman, and I'm trying to think what can do it going across the map. Because the problem is he's in this weird spot where if your Alpha Strike idea, even if you're going first, if it relies on you pre-moving up the map, then you're breaking FTI, which means you're exposing yourself to being interacted with first, which is the problem. Whereas Vulture, with enough TKs at least, has the range that, well, when he's going first, he can just sit there. He doesn't have to break first turn immunity to do it. And so he has sort of the asymmetrical advantage in that regard. Mm-hmm. And so you run into the problem of if any of your Alpha Strike ideas have to move at all first, you run yourself into trouble because they're going to be able to attack you first instead of you doing the attacking, which is where Vulture usually wants to be.
Right.
And then the other side of it is like there's very, very limited pool of figures that can basically do what Vulture does, where they sit for a turn and then go all the way in. I mean, it's what? Him, Batman, Punisher War Machine, I guess, after a TK, he just barely has the range, right? Something like that.
So with Batman, how do you do it? You TK him and then you use him?
No. Prime Batman, he has full map reach.
Oh, you can just sit from the back. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because he has infinite range, so he doesn't care.
I mean, Micron maybe? Or...
What was it?
Micron or... No.
I mean, Micron and Atom, it's the same mechanic.
Yeah, but you still have to move up first.
But the problem with basically all of those, except for like Punisher War Machines and Batman are the two safer ones, because they're doing it slightly more at range, but even Punisher War Machines has this problem. Batman of those is the one that's the strongest in the sense that he gets to stay where he started, so he's still all the way across the map and has the defensive bonus of having 20 squares between you and them. Yeah. So they still have to overcome that after he attacks. Whereas, like, even with Punisher War Machine's got to be within like 9 squares, maybe 10 of whatever it is he ends up shooting. Which means when he's done, whatever else they have on their team is going to be able to attack him, which is a problem. So it's very committal is the problem. And same with like Atom and Micron. I mean, they're going to be right there if they're committing.
I imagine with Punisher War Machine, I mean, it's hard to get at Vulture because, I mean, obviously if you're playing Vulture, you're not going to leave him exposed. So even
I mean that's yeah. And I'm talking. So starting with the abstract. In the abstract, those are the kinds of effects you'd be looking for. Yeah. In order to punish it, because the two ways to punish Vulture is you outwit him ahead of time and then you can't do it. I don't know a way to do that in Modern really, because nothing with outwit has like improved characters currently. So you're not getting that. That one's just off the table for the time being until like they errata Franklin Von Doom to have outwit and improve targeting and turn him into actual unseen. Something like that. But so you have that problem of very little has improved targeting with outwit right now. Like I guess Barkley does with his 10 range one that gets through everything except for characters, which then he still doesn't get through characters, which is the problem. You just put any random dork in front of Vulture and you can't outwit him. So the only choice you have is to attack Vulture first. And the ideas that you would normally do it with are the other Alpha Strikes in the format. The problem is all of them kind of run into the problem. None of them have good improved targeting. I mean, Batman can't see through characters. Batman can't see through blocking. He can see through stealth, at least, but I mean, Vulture doesn't have that anyway. And then Punisher War Machine can't see through characters, can't see through blocking, can't see through elevated. The Atoms can sort of get around it because they're doing close attacks, but they got to get really, really close. And then you still have to worry about positioning and getting adjacent squares. So it's really hard to do in practice to be able to get Vulture before he goes off, rather than after. And if Vulture's going off first, I mean, that's sort of his whole idea. Is if he goes off first, he's getting you. And so that's sort of the issue. And so barrier becomes at a premium when you're playing Vulture, because it helps you ensure that, well, nothing's getting through the barrier right now, really. So I guess Vulture gets to go first then, even if you only have 1 or 2 turns of it. And so on the other side, basically, the only thing you have left if you want to really defend against a Vulture is some combination of map choice and barrier, I guess. But like, I don't actually think that works right now, at least on some variations. So I mean, you have the problem of like the Scott, the 4 points vulture variation. Like, they just kind of laugh at you if that's your plan because they have Tri-Sentinel. Tri-Sentinel says you thought you had blocking and you don't. You just have a bunch of damage you're taking for free. And so, like, in the finals match, I mean, if he's up, I think he actually beat Ed, and I have no idea how that game went. I'd be curious to know exactly how that game went because
talking about Scott Crampton's team, his vulture. He had vulture.
Yeah,
right?
Ed Isaac Ed is it Ed Isaac Berkovitz? Ed Arnold Berkovitz.
Yeah,
Arnold Berkovitz. I'm confusing him and his son at the same time. So he, I believe, was on the same list as Scott in top 16, and then he lost to Gallagher in round 1. And I would have been curious to see how that game went because my thought in the theory was that Barclay never does anything in that matchup because basically you just turn 1, fizzle the retail to blow up all the blocking near your own stuff, and then he never has any stuff adjacent to blocking to target. And it's not so easy for him to send things in and threaten you because he just doesn't have that many threats that are that scary. And so you just buy enough time opening up the map that eventually you have a turn where you can go, okay, send Tri-Sentinel all the way in, blow up all the stuff on their side of the map, get a bunch of free damage in, and then send Vulture in. I wasn't sure. I was very surprised when I found out that that the matchup went the other way, but I didn't see how it played, so it could be I have the theory wrong and there's a way to take out Tri-Sentinel first.
Wait, so you saying Tri-Sentinel was on the same team as the Vulture, so that
and Scott played the same way. So it's like
up on against Vulture, then you would just send.
I didn't see how the match went, but my theory on it is if you're playing to defend a Vulture, is I'm going to put up a bunch of blocking terrain. Well, if Vulture has a Tri-Sentinel, that's not going to work that well.
Yeah,
that's the problem. And so, like, for that variation, they just kind of like look at your silly idea that you're going to defend with barrier, and just like, you can try. I don't think it's going to work, but you can certainly give it a shot.
Right.
And whereas with mine, like, I don't have that easy of an out, but barrier is not impossible to overcome. It just takes a couple extra actions. And in most of the matchups that are barriering enough to defend, it's very hard to have both good barrier defenses and a scary offense that you can threaten at the same time, which I was trying to pull off the best mix if I could for that, in particular for the mirror match. And so because of that, generally speaking, if the opponent has some sort of barrier defense, it means they don't have something super scary, I guess, unless they're specifically playing Vulture. That's the one team that can sort of do it. Because it turns out all the other relatively scary stuff, it's really hard to do it from all the way across the map and not be really down an action count. Because barrier costs power actions. And so that's sort of the issue is, okay, well, if they're barriering up, then I'm going to have tons of time to just kind of like chip away at terrain that's needed to open up sight lines. Because typically the teams doing that are going to play on something like Ancient Hold or King's Tomb, where it's not so easy for them to do anything to you either. Because the blocking's in the way, so you get kind of time to tunnel your way through and get yourself a line where it's okay. I have to spend a whole turn doing it, but I can basically like carry up a Jason, make chaos, blow up a piece of terrain, and then force my way through. And that's sort of the premise. Well, at least that was my theory on it, in for that type of a matchup, which worked against George, and then eventually worked against Robert. Although that one took a lot longer in terms of turns.
So, I mean, with Marvella on your team, would you? I was thinking about it. So, like, would you barrier up in the beginning just to move Vulture up a little bit closer, or just to
by and large, Marvella ended up being more just this nice little sidestepping piece that just moves around a bit and occasionally saves me. Really, what she was there for once she was added. So the first thing, the only change on the team that happened was the original version had the Spirits Will Guide Us map bonus,
right? Okay.
Oz, and Diplomat. And then the new version has none of those, and then has 76 in Marvella. And so the trade-off was Oz was originally on the team for a very specific purpose, which was the mirror match. And it was to make it harder for them, when I lost map roll in the mirror, for them to have full map strike range and the ability to get through a barrier at the same time. Because basically the way the spacing worked out, that in virtually all cases, if they weren't playing their own copy of Oz, they either wouldn't have enough TKs to actually get all the way across the map, or if they did, they wouldn't have enough actions to both use all the TKs they needed to cross the map and charge and take an action to blow up terrain. It would just be too many actions. 76 basically played the same role because it just lost them an action outright, which most of the time was good enough. And then he refilled the perplex that I lost from Diplomat at the same time. And so then the question is, okay, well, I've got like 10 points left because I hadn't cut the map bonus yet, but I didn't really see anything I wanted for it. I didn't want to play like a random one-click like Brainiac piece. I just didn't think I needed the outwit that much. And then I saw Marvella, and I was like, it basically came down to Marvella or Mary Jane was going to be the thing there, and then get rid of the map bonus. And I decided Marvella was just more useful because by default, she basically just means I never have to make a Lord Gaia. So I get basically an extra pog every game for 15 points because I don't have to make Lord Gaia in order to have barrier for a turn. And then she has the additional upside that if for some reason I need extra barrier, I can have both her and Lord Gaia do it, and I can get like 11 squares in a turn if I need it.
Yeah.
And so she was really good in that regard. And then she had a bunch of other incidental benefits. I mean, her Empower was useful a couple times. The ability to copy PD was useful once. The fact she could fly and carry to reposition stuff was useful a bunch of times. Stuff like that. But the main thing was that I already had barrier access from Gaia and extra blocking terrain from Proteus. So I had quite a few squares of blocking terrain even on the old version. The thing that she did is she made it like strictly main force access for relatively cheap, which meant that I could save the Lord Gaia use, which meant I had better pog use throughout the tournament. Like I made fewer Lord Gaias than Stellar Axes that event, I think. Like that should tell you something in terms of like how little I needed to use Lord Gaia once I had her.
Okay. You said you used Delrax more, or?
Well, yeah, I used him once.
Oh, that's all you do. That's all. Yeah, I was wondering. So I was actually wondering because I've tried to build vulture teams before, and I'm always thinking like I need loads of perplex in order to.
Not really.
But yeah, I noticed your team did not have a lot of perplex. It had maybe
It could get 3.
You could get 3. You could get one from Wingard, and then one from
Valeria, and one from
Valeria has perplex, or
yeah, she has everything. Come on.
Okay. All right.
She has everything.
3 is good though. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and the funny thing, they always go into attack. They never go into damage.
Okay.
Because it turns out that you equip arms and you don't need extra damage.
All right. Yeah, I never even thought about that because and when you're going across the map with Vulture and you're choosing which characters to attack first, how do you decide that?
It depends. The basic calculation is whatever has the best math of just machine gunning everything. So usually I first look, is there anything I can kill in one hit? And then the question is, if yes, is there any square from which I can kill 2 things in one hit each within a single flurry? And if the answer is yes, then I look for, of the combinations of those that exist, which one has the odds of hitting them both the highest is usually the first priority. Because that means as long as you do that, you net an extra charge, which means you get that many more attack rolls before you give yourself a lot more leeway. It allows flurry to act like almost like a super prop control. Because you just get that many more attacks that you can miss before you fizzle out. So usually that's the biggest priority. And then after that, it's sort of, you're just going and picking off the stuff you can pick off and finding squares that you can pick something off and damage something else. And so you can go somewhere else and pick another thing off and then maybe chip away at something so that eventually, once you've picked off all the things you can kill on their own, with those extra attacks you've been able to divert elsewhere, you can then turn them into like a one-click character. So for instance, a very common situation would be, okay, I'd go after something like a Wendigo with the first half of the flurry to kill it, and then use the second attack on a Valeria to put her last click. Well, now Valeria is 1 click instead of 4 clicks. So my next charge, I can have Valeria be a 1-click character. So I can kill her in 1 hit and kill another thing in 1 hit. That's small. And so like that's the main thing that you're looking for is ways that you can essentially use that as like the 2 attacks together to kill something and put some damage into something else if you can't just outright kill 2 things at once. And then once you run out of like small things to kill, it's just pick a thing and go after them usually. There's usually not that much thought at that point.
That's really interesting. And so I'm so how often did Jason Wingard come up in your like? How often did you use his mind control chain and stuff like that?
He missed twice. I
That's
think that
it.
was it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was game two. I don't think he did any. The only other thing he does is pogs. He makes a lot of pogs, and the pogs are insane.
Which
I'm trying to
pogs do
think.
you
Did he
which
do it?
pogs do
Did he
you
do anything
use?
as Scott? Maybe maybe he activated against Scott because that was a weird game. But he did basically. He might have done some randoms. I mean, I think he just did like a regular ranged attack against Isaac. He did nothing but pogs in the last two games. Yeah. So I mean, mostly he just makes the pogs.
And which pogs do you use? You use Isaac's pogs mostly, and
It's mostly Lord. It's mostly Chaos is number one, and then number two is probably Molecule Man. Is the number two pog? Oh no, number two is Chewy. I completely forgot. It's something between Chaos and Chewy are the top two, and then it's probably Molecule Man is next, and then almost nothing else gets used that happens to be there. So like Yafet's on the team for various purposes, and he never ends up being used. Lord Gaia is on the team. There are games maybe he could have been used, but it just never came up that he actually ended up needing to be used because I was able to do everything with Marvella that I needed. Stellar X got used once just because of a weird spacing issue in the finals. And then I think that's all the pogs. Oh, and then Jim Gordon. Jim Gordon got used a couple times too. I mean, they pretty much all the ones that were on there got used for their purpose, unless the purpose didn't come up.
okay.
So, which was Yafet. There were certain games where the idea with Yafet is he comes in and poisons immediately, and then you get an autonomous attack to try and get your third attack for like a troublemaker type idea. Typically, it's something like the full stealth widows, but I never played against the full stealth widows, and the version I did play against let me just try to vulture them first, and so it didn't really happen. And then Stellar X was never anticipated being used. He's just a free thing you get because you're already playing the other two. And then Lord Gaia didn't really come up just because Marvella was enough in the games I actually played.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely an awesome team. Definitely an awesome run. You definitely are should be definitely happy to have won the world championship and also current not national and world championship for 2020. Let me ask you, what is your process in building a team? As far as like why did you pick this particular team for nationals and worlds? It was almost the same team for both tournaments. What goes into team building for you?
So it's sort of a two-step process. Step one is there anything that's so completely busted that I can't not play it? That's usually the first step. And so for instance, like there is a long stretch of time this year where I was trying to figure out exactly what the configuration was there's a bronze event circuit that Majestics runs. And so there was a couple pieces where I'm just like, I know this piece is completely busted. I don't know exactly how to play it to make it just completely unfair, but I know it is. So that's the piece I'm playing. And so that was my long saga of trying to get Black Glove Demon banned because I just knew the piece was completely unfair. There was no way it was going to stay in the long term the way it was. And it was just a matter of figuring out how to make that one piece so good that it had to go. There wasn't anything like that in Modern. And so step two is basically, well, go make a list of the stuff that in the abstract is just way better than everything else in the format and see how much of it you can play. And then if none of those look appetizing, then it's go pick a good keyword and see what the best thing you can do with it is. But that's usually my priority list. In the case of like the pre-rotation format, it was a bit more on 3 than the other two because of how ID cards worked. ID cards basically meant that as a practical matter, you always got to play all the best figures. It was a question of how many and which supporting effects you got to play with them, because all your best figures were these 3 and 5 point characters that you had for one turn.
Okay.
And so it was a bit of a weird situation in those particular environments. But I mean, pretty much most of the teams I've tried to play at the major events have basically been of the mash together all the stuff I think is the best in the format type teams. So like 2014 Nats for for both Worlds and 2014 Nats was just a bunch of good figures with a Book of the Skulls. 2014 Worlds was three of what I thought were some of the best figures in the format with what I thought was the best resource in the format. 2015 I didn't play. 2016 was what I thought was the two most powerful pieces in the format. Faust after errata and just on Seifert, with like basically the best IDs that the team could play with it. 2017, that was Howard's year. I'm trying to remember which year was which. Yeah, I think 2017 is Howard. And so 2017, I took a look at the format. I'm like, well, the two best pieces in the format are Goblin King and Jakeem Thunder with IDs. So I guess I'm going to play those two together. So I played Jakeem and the baby Goblin King. And then the next year, I didn't end up playing Worlds. What did I play in Nats? Oh, in Nats, I played basically the mishmash of just good stuff. So it was just like double Ironheart, Haha Joker, Lockjaw, Sam Cap, just a bunch of just good pieces. Yeah. And then 2019, I played Cosmic, and it was just all good stuff. So it was Kobik, Unseen, Traitor, Floras, Groot. And those are just all good figures that happen to share a keyword. And then you get the IDs with them. So I mean that's typically the way it ends up going. Is you're just looking for what are the most inherently powerful effects in the format. How many of them can you jam on the same team? And then what little min-maxing can you do on the margins for adjusting for specific matchups? Because I was very, very unhappy with the Nats team for a very specific reason, in that I don't like Oz. I don't think the piece is actually good. The problem is he's the only piece that does what he does in terms of disrupting this TK specifically. And so he was one of those concessions at the last second where it's like, okay, everything else on the team is great. I like all the other pieces I'm playing. All of them are really powerful, best in the format type stuff. And then I just need to play Oz because he helps with this one specific thing that only he does. Whereas the World team I was much happier with, because then I got to play 76 instead, and 76 is just great. I mean, that piece is crazy. And so I basically got to play the better version of the Nats team because there was a better version of a piece I had to play.
So what don't you like about Mr. Oz?
He just dies.
Okay.
That's the problem. He's 40 points and dies. I mean, I haven't been sold on him from day one. Day one, like, he's better now, but he was so bad when he first came out. When people not when he first came out. When Kobik first came out, it made Oz so bad. Like, people were still playing him, and I'm like, I don't understand why you're still playing this piece. He doesn't do anything. All he does is he says every team that's playing Kobik gets a free 40 points. Because they call in Cyclops, they have Cyclops trade team abilities with your Oz. So your Oz, so now the Cyclops has improved targeting, goes through hindering, so your stealth doesn't do anything. And then it's basically, okay, so for 3 points, they get to say roll a 6 on your super senses or just lose 40 points. Just never seemed like a good trade-off to me. To give your opponent, all the Kobik teams, that option. And Kobik was one of the stronger pieces in the format, I felt. And so nowadays, I mean, still same problem. He just gets shot and dies. I mean, that was one of the biggest headaches that happened at the beginning of my game against Isaac. Was he was able to kill Dark Phoenix and Oz. I was like, okay, well, yeah, that's a thing. Oz just dies. It only takes 2 clicks.
Yeah.
Every Valeria in the world is just like, okay, he dies in 1 turn. Valeria spins him plus whatever your other placement effect is.
Are there any other pieces in the format that you don't like or that you think are overrated?
Overrated?
Or just don't
I'm thinking. Yeah, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking overrated first. Don't like. I mean, I'm on record for this. I don't think Immortal Hulk's a good piece. People play him, and I don't know why. But overrated. Like, the piece is actually still good. It's just not as good as people think. Is my placement. I think that's where I am on just the Fantastic Four generally. Okay. And then God Doom is the other one. I think people think God Doom is great, and I think God Doom is okay. Same with also just the Fantastic Four in general, I think. That's probably the two.
Well, as far as like a one-man army, actually, I mean, like, Starter Doom is really good compared to God Doom, I've heard.
I would assume so. He's got the stop clicks are intermittent, which is better.
Yeah.
I just don't think there's much of a place for a one-man army in the format right now.
No.
Just everything's too good.
But yeah, I mean, God Doom. I mean, as far as like competitive play, he 100 points. He brings leadership, he brings perplex, and then
He does a lot of things.
he does a lot of things. Yeah,
And he's okay. Like, he's not bad. Like, if I see him on the team, I'm like, okay, they're not playing bad figures, but he's not like great. He's not like, oh god, there's a god doom across the table. It's like, no, it's like, okay, there's a god doom across the table. I mean,
yeah.
I can deal with that.
He's like a
You know,
full swaver kind of.
yeah, I mean, it's fine. Like, it has its place. It's useful. It can do some powerful things, but it doesn't, make me shiver whenever I see it sitting across from me. Whereas, like, if I see a vulture on the other side, I'm like, oh, I really got to do this. Like, that's the way I feel when I see a vulture on their side, which is part of the reason I play it, because I'd rather be on the side doing that to other people than having it done to me.
Yeah, the pieces that really scare me when I go up against certain teams is the pieces that scare me the most are Vulture and Batman Prime, I think, because of what you mentioned.
They're just the two most annoying pieces to have to play around.
Full map reach, and you don't know what to do. Like, what do I do against this?
Yeah, yeah, and you have to be protecting against it every turn forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that assessment. For me, the other one is Chase Widow's just so annoying.
Yeah.
She's just a pain.
Like, Captain Marvel's got a huge reach, and playing them together. I mean, that team with the double Captain Marvel and Black Widow was a good team. I mean, I don't know if it's viable now, but it's still good. But I mean, like, there's better things out. Like, what do you think of the double Captain Marvel Black Widow team? Or is that?
I mean, I felt like it was the standard bearer for the format for a while. Basically, it was, okay, if you don't have a good matchup against this, you shouldn't be playing it. Because like, this team's really straightforward and just playing nothing but good pieces. Like, that's the kind of team where you need to have a good matchup against that kind of stuff. You need to have a plan against it, because there's no reason it couldn't just take the whole event.
Do you think either Captain Marvel or Black Widow should get nerfed?
Black Widow, I think, absolutely has to. I think she's absurd. She's my number 4 priority in the format right now. Captain Marvel's not even on the list, really. Captain Marvel, I feel like, is in the Captain Marvel might need Chewie to be a power action, maybe, but even as is, I think she's on the very high end of what's acceptable, but she is, which is sort of how I feel Dark Phoenix is in the same spot, which is very, very high end of what is acceptable and not completely busted, but still within the range of what should be allowed generally. Whereas like Chase Widow is just ridiculous. The piece does just too many things, does all of them too well, and so many of the things just feel terrible. Like, there's nothing. It's one thing if you just have a really powerful piece, but all of the things it does that are powerful are kind of just like, okay, I can live with that type stuff. Like, you just have a piece that has like a 15 attack, 7 damage. It's like, yeah, that'd be really powerful, but okay, it's they're stats. Stats happen. Fine. Chase Widow, like, doesn't let you reroll crit misses. She takes away all your powers, and then she makes damage dealing pogs that don't have to roll. It's just like, any one of those could have been the basis of a chase piece. And then she does all of them. And then she has good stats on top of it. She's like, what, 12-3 Psychic Blast?
Yeah, with
just why?
With a stock click that heals back up.
Right. I mean, it's just, she's so silly.
Stealth and leadership. It's crazy.
Yeah, she does everything. So that's my problem with her. She does too much. And she does it too well.
Phoenix is going to rise in value too, because now the X-Men set's coming out. So you're probably going to see some X-Men teams.
Could be. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. I mean, she was already the retail in the format.
Yeah.
It's hard to say the best, because basically none of the other ones get played for their retails. I mean, it's basically her. Tri-Sentinel is really not paid for the retail. It's played for like the blocking breaking stuff, regardless of retail. Okay. And then like Iceman's not played at all. Krakoa's not played at all. And then Magneto's not played for the retail either. He just happens to have it. Yeah, right? You could take retail off him, you still play him.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's like the retail in the format. Like, there really just isn't another one, other than just some characters who you're playing anyway incidentally have it.
So you were talking about other teams like that you played in the past. Have you ever won a Nationals or Worlds before, or is this your first time winning?
Yeah, I won 2014 Nats.
Oh, you won 2014. Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
What team was that?
Let's see if I can remember it all. Lydia Maller, White Queen, White Witch, maybe. I'm trying to remember the name. I think it's White Witch because it's DC. White Queen that's Emma. White Queen is Emma. Yeah, so White Witch. Should have been Ophidian on White Witch, Parallax on Lydia. The 25-point, I don't know if it was Fast Forces or if it was like a starter set Batgirl. Split Lip. And I think like a random lawyer pog. And then Book of the Skulls with all the hammers.
And Book of the Skulls is really broken, right? Or so I've heard. Or
I am under the impression it's not that broken, but I've been overruled. So I think it's fine. I think it's definitely very, very powerful, but I don't know that it's broken. I think the combination of how it now, after some of the rules changes, how it works now with ID cards definitely made it broken. It definitely put it a step beyond just good and into broken.
In 2014, there were no ID cards, or
ID cards didn't exist until until the next year, I think. Okay. Next year was Avengers Assembled was the first set with them, which was 2015.
Did you enjoy that game element, ID cards, or I know a lot?
Oh no, I think they were a total abomination.
Okay.
good riddance. I hope they never come back. Stay in the dustbin of Clix history forever.
Well, like what if they changed them to make them like 10 points or something like that?
No, I don't care. I'm done with them. Okay. The only thing they could have done, they can basically no longer do. The one thing I had contested for a while, that ID cards are fine if all they do is the inspiration. If it's 5 points, you get once per game, like so the Superman ID, right? Once per game for 5 points, you give a character a power action, it gives your team invincible. Seems fine. I think that'll be played. I think it'll be powerful. I think people would use it. I don't think it's busted. But once they printed students, that went off the table because they don't have inspirations.
Yeah.
So no, I just want them gone. I want them to stay gone. I hope they never come back.
The student ones were the worst. They were the best ones because they were 3 points and.
Well,
I don't know actually.
The best ones. Some of the 5 point ones were the best ones. They had the best characters. So
yeah, no,
the characters really the main thing that determined it, not the point value.
Right. Okay. But like you had some that like if you were like they had a student Cyclops, you could use.
Oh, you just played that instead, yeah, or you played both.
Yeah, or you played both. And then what are your favorite game elements? I mean, you mentioned you hated ID cards, and I think a lot of people are there with you on that.